Welcome to Freed on Business. He grew up in South Florida, has been in business here since the early 90s, and has closed over $3 billion in deals. He's seen it all. He always has an opinion, and he's always ready to share it. Informed, entertaining, and connected, he has his finger on the pulse of South Florida's business community. He's Jim Freed, and this is Freed on Business.
Well, I love that opening. I look so young and handsome during that. I want to thank Mr. Mendoza, as always, for helping me really look good. We're here on Freed on Business. We've got our December to Remember rolling. We've got our good friend Tom Handler on. He's going to talk about how to protect your assets from the tax man by year end. And I want to always thank our sponsors. We've been on for 15 years. Warren Henry's been with us for well over a decade. I want to thank Larry, Eric, Ismet, Gio, Jack, Maytal, Stark, and the rest of the Warren Henry team, of course, Warren, for being our sponsors for so many years. Always the best price, always the best service, always Warren Henry. And now to my favorite tax aficionado, Mr. Tom Handler. We've got some great stuff prepared for you, Tom. You better be ready. I actually prepared questions this time.
I think I'm good to go.
Yeah, well, you never know until you get the questions, Tom. So I want to get started. First of all, Tom, lay out a little bit about what's going on right now with the new tax laws and some of the things that people can do by year end to protect themselves.
Certainly. So not a lot of surprises or changes in the laws themselves. The indexing has caused a number of things to move up. The rates have held fairly constant, but the growing bubble is down below the surface and hasn't yet emerged. And that is that, the federal government spent trillions of dollars in an unprecedented manner in a very short period of time. And so there's a great press for revenue. And the IRS was armed with about $80 billion, and they've been in a hiring frenzy trying to staff up and ultimately train these people. And over the years, although the number of audits or examinations has actually dropped, the audits and examinations of businesses and high net worth individuals, top 10% and top 1% in particular, have gone precipitously up. So the focus is very clearly on where the money is, which tend to be businesses and these high net worth, high income taxpayers. And that's without the impact of the wealth squad, which targets 30 million minimum. Most of the families they've gone after are hundreds of millions, but their stated minimum is 30 million in net worth. So you've got a whole separate group of experts just going after people in addition to the regular examining agents and then the state and territory agents as well. So there's a lot of scrutiny on taxpayers. And with this new 80 billion allocation, it's only going to go one way. It's going to go up. So you can expect greater scrutiny. As a result, people want to cross the T's and dot the I's, be more cautious. And we've got a number of changes, and I'll hit a couple of areas. So first, in the estate tax, we've had the most generous estate exclusion in the history of the country for quite some time now. And I'm still amazed that it's still there, though it's ending. So the key message here is that the TCJA that raised these levels automatically reduces the estate tax lifetime exclusion to $5 million on January 1, 2026. So we have 2024 and 25, and it goes down automatically. So as we sit here today, the annual gifting threshold is $17,000 per person or $34,000 for a joint gift for a married couple. In 2024, that amount rises to $18,000 and $36,000 respectively. And what that means, you can give each child, niece, nephew, grandson, neighbor, friend, sibling up to $34,000 this year. Then you should turn around and make another gift on January 1, because then all the appreciation for 2024 also escapes the estate and gift tax. So you can make these gifts side by side. And if there's a valuation necessary, because it's a business interest or an antique or something unusual, you can do one valuation that'll cover both gifts and the related gift tax returns. The lifetime exclusion right now is at $12,920,000, a huge amount of money, double that for each portion of a married couple. And in 2024, that amount's going to go up even more. So the indexing is going to cause it to go to 13.61 million on January 1, 2024, which is massive. So again, it's going to drop to this $5 million threshold plus indexing. So it's likely to be 6.5 million, 7 million in that ballpark. So certainly less than half of what it is today. So the moral of the story will be you want to make lifetime gifts that you can to get money out of the estate, and you're going to make your lifetime exclusion gift before January 1, 2026, when the amount automatically drops down to a significantly lower level. So those who have taxable estates, now is the time to use these exclusions. If you don't use them, you'll lose them, and they're gone altogether. And if we do sophisticated strategies, we can discount and make even larger gifts. So those numbers can be quite a bit higher using leverage, family holding company discounts, and other estate and gift methodologies that are very tried and tested to get a significant amount of your estate removed from taxation. And the reason that's so important, Jim, is because the estate tax rates are very, very high and almost confiscatory, and are considered confiscatory by many people. They've ranged between 40% to 55% in my lifetime, plus the state estate tax goes on top of that. Like about 20 states have a 16% estate tax. Then you also pay income in respect of a decedent on certain income. So, for example, qualified plans and IRAs, you pay the income tax as though you just received all that money. Then if you give money to a grandniece or a grandnephew or a grandchild, you would have skipped a generation. You pay the generation skipping tax, which is the same 40 to 55% rate over the years a second time. So the net result is you can have really taxable, highly taxable estates, and there's not much left. That's exactly right. So then the tax can become confiscatory, but it could get even worse. Keep in mind that the Biden Green Book proposal was to impose a 43.6% tax, which is the Obamacare tax plus the increased capital gains rate tax on all the appreciation in the estate, whether you sold the asset or not. So in addition to the estate tax and income respect for the decedent, you pay a capital gains tax on things you didn't sell in the estate. That would put an awful lot of estates in the 85 to 95% bracket, which means there's nothing left for the beneficiaries. So, if you want to give up your assets to the state, you might as well move to Cuba or Russia, but they just take the assets and they're kind of open about it. So if this proposal were to go through, it would be the combined most confiscatory estate combined tax that ever existed. It's really rather mind-numbing. So far that seems to be laying fallow, but it hasn't gone by the wayside. So depending on who gets control of Congress in the next election, things could be very topsy-turvy.
Well, hold on. That's just talking about the estate tax. Now, I've heard there's this Corporate Transparency Act going on also. What's the impact on American business there?
Yeah, this is tough duty. It's like the 1-2 punch. First, we're going to regulate the living tar out of you, the highest level of regulation in the world. Now, on top of it, this new act, Wall Street Journal had a great article, and I'm paraphrasing the title, but it was something like the death of privacy, or the death of privacy rights, or something along that line. And what this act does for the first time is it requires businesses, almost all businesses who aren't already regulated by the SEC or CFTC. So there's a bunch of exceptions for businesses already regulated by those agencies. But for all other businesses, and I mean all other businesses, they're going to impose this requirement. And the law took effect January 1, or was passed January 1 of this year. It takes effect January 1 of next year. And what it means is that all these businesses will have to register and disclose information they've never had to disclose. So any business formed from January 1, 2024 on has to make those timely disclosures to the government. And then all existing businesses have until the end of the year to make those disclosures. And this is a pile of paperwork. It's so much information. I can't believe it isn't really spam, and it's not worth the paperwork and the administration it's going to cost American businesses. This is a very heavy-handed provision, and it requires you to provide this report with all this personal information about the owners and applicants for business licenses with the Treasury Crime Enforcement Network called FinCEN. And this act is a report directly to them of everything under the kitchen sink. including who are the beneficial owners, looking through trusts, a lot of information that was previously private. So the paperwork that's going to be required of this is no fun at all. And it's a sort of a continuing obligation to keep it current. There's no filing fee, but the cost of doing this is going to be significant. And all these American businesses are going to be paying their lawyers because it's almost impossible to figure this out.
FinCEN, isn't that about money laundering and illegal activity?
They are. They're looking at it's the Treasury's Financial Crimes Group, and so it's everything from money laundering, Treasury violations, printing stuff, joint overlap with the Secret Service on counterfeiting. So there's a lot of areas covered by FinCEN, securities fraud, on and on. So yeah, you have a heavy-handed, criminal by orientation government agency looking at this information that has never before been provided to the government. It's not supposed to be shared other than intergovernmentally among other government agencies, but it's not supposed to be in the public domain, assuming that people comply with
get
that.
Hacked.
Yeah, well, if they get hacked or people get bribed, this stuff becomes public. And there's no good news here for a business owner or a wealthy or high-income individual. You want to stay off the radar screen. You don't want criminals and cyber hackers and thieves and hostage and kidnap people or anybody else out there coming after you and your family. So if this information gets out, it's completely disastrous. And frankly, I would rather the government not have this information, but that's no longer an option. If you are not one of those exempt businesses already, again, regulated by the SEC or the CFTC for commodities, you're going to have to report. And it's a very onerous reporting requirement. So get ready. It's kicking up, and existing businesses are going to have to deal with it next year. And any new business formed from January 1 has to comply with it almost immediately.
You should call this the Government Full Employment Act.
It will absolutely add government. It'll add to the cost of administrating a business. I don't see this as creating a lot of productivity. I think it's well conceived in the idea that, I love to get, money launderers and people committing financial crimes. I'm all over that. But the price to pay for that is that 99.9% of the people filing this stuff won't be doing anything, and they're paying for all this. So it's a tough call, and hopefully it achieves the desired purpose without putting an even heavier burden on American businesses.
Tom, can you stick with us? We'd like to go to a quick break, and then I want to come back and ask you about specific strategies people can use outside of the estate or corporate thing to help mitigate their year-end tax bill. You got another couple of minutes for us?
Of course, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mendoza, shine. Hi, everybody. Here we are celebrating our 15th year of Freed on Business, and I want to thank Warren Henry Automotive. They've been with us well over a decade. I want to thank Larry, Warren, Eric, Ismet, Maytal Stark, Jack, the whole team over there, Gio, all the people that help us put on the show and always help my family, my friends, and my clients have a great car experience. And remember, everybody, when you're looking to buy or lease that car, you want to get every advantage that you can. That's why you have to check out Warren Henry, Land Rover, Range Rover, Infiniti, Jaguar, and now their new Lincoln store. They're building it out right now at 151st and Biscayne. They've got a gorgeous Audi store in Gainesville. Their award-winning Land Rover, Range Rover store in South Dade. And, of course, down in the Keys, they've got all the great nameplates. And all of the cars are great cars, and they all come with the Warren Henry Advantage. It's a long list of services. Warren spent a lot of time putting this together. It starts off, of course, with the free loaner car if you've got to leave your car for service. Let's take a break on that. My mom just got a nail in her tire. She took it right over to Warren Henry. They fixed it, took care of her, made her feel like gold. She was all nervous. She went over, talked to Maytal. Maytal made her feel great. So with all the things that I talk about and all the things that come with the Warren Henry Advantage, the most important thing that came with the Warren Henry Advantage came yesterday, which was calmness for my mom, and it took away her anxiety. That's what they do at Warren Henry. So, they've got the 72-hour exchange. They make sure that you're going to get the best price on your trade-in, the best price on your new car and leased car. But the most important thing is the peace of mind they give you. So remember, join me, my mom, my beautiful wife, Vivian, lots and lots of my clients. Head on over to Warren Henry. Get yourself some peace of mind. Always the best price, always the best service, always Warren Henry. Hey, everybody, Jim Freed here. I'm the founder of Sandstone Realty Advisors. We advise families, high net worth individuals, and real estate operating companies on how to capitalize their transactions and build their business strategies. So reach out to me. We've got clients that range from multinational corporations that are seeking to buy challenged properties to families that are looking to refinance properties to help pay money out to some of the family members. We've got another situation where we're helping another family create an entire public company. So reach out to us, DM us, let me know, because my personal brand is that I help other people achieve their dreams and goals. I do that by solving problems for them and bringing them peace of mind. It makes me feel great. So remember, DM me, call me, and remember, whenever you reach out to me, it's always all about you.
Welcome back to Freed on Business. Connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Jim Freed or at Freed on Business, and on Instagram at Jim Freed1. Now, back to your host, Jim Freed.
All right, we're on with I'm proud to say, good friend, Tom Handler. Tom's been protecting the assets of some of the most high-profile people in the world. We're, of course, not able to mention them. Mr. Mendoza, where is Mr. Handler? There he is, pops right out of the palm trees and right into the screen. Tom, I want to thank you so much for joining us and bringing us your unique, very close to the situation perspective on everything. We talked a little bit about the pending changes coming to the estate tax and people needing to make moves there. We've talked about the Corporate Transparency Act, which is nothing more than giving all my personal information to somebody like I was an SEC-related firm. Now, let's talk about some of the moves that people can make before year end to help them save money on their taxes and protect their family's wealth. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. So, there isn't much change in the rates. So the rates will continue to range from 10% to 37%. And it's 10% up to 11,600, but that's after exemptions and exclusions, so it's quite a bit higher than that. At 609,350, you hit the top income tax rate of 37%, or a married couple at 731,000. So it takes a while to get there. So 37% is currently the top bracket, in addition to capital gains and other potential taxes. Tax Foundation tells us that in 2022, 60% of the American population paid zero income tax. 60% paid absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, the top 1% paid 42.3% of all income taxes. So you judge me, you tell me whether you think they're doing their fair share or not. The top 10% are literally paying for everything, of every kind of tax, everywhere. And this commentary that the tax is not progressive is ludicrous. It's highly progressive and squarely focused on the head of the top 10%. So in view of that, you want to do everything you can to diminish those taxes, or to the point where they're reasonable, or a level that's acceptable to you. And paying taxes is a privilege, but paying taxes to a fair level is probably the prudent thing to do, and not just give the money away when you have a right to savings. So simple things like qualified plans, IRAs, pensions, Roth IRAs, 529 plans are always a very good idea. These are simple. There's zero tax risk. The money is deductible with the exception of the Roth IRA. And the Roth IRA, it grows tax-free. So I would encourage everyone to max out their contributions, their 401k plans, defined benefit plans, IRAs, and Roth IRAs. And importantly, there's a methodology where some 401ks can affect a transfer to a Roth IRA that you might not otherwise be able to make. And not all 401ks have those provisions, but many do, and more will have them going forward. So you want to max those out. Those are easy and simple. For cash basis taxpayers, which is almost everybody except larger businesses, you have the ability to prepay, to accelerate deductions and defer revenue. So, for example, you don't have to issue bills in the month of December. You wait and you issue those bills December 30th. So they don't come in until January. Same thing. You can pay all the expenses for the first quarter on December 30th and get that deduction. So one of the benefits of being a cash basis business is at the end of the year, you can decide what you want to pull out and how much you want to put into deductions for the deductions to minimize the overall tax bite. So doing that year after year can knock down your taxes 2, 3, 4, 5, 10%, depending on how much you're willing to prepay. And it's perfectly legitimate and perfectly legal. So we absolutely want to do that if we can. With respect to capital gains, the rate is 20% plus the 3.8% Obamacare tax on top of that. Under approximately $50,000, you don't pay that tax, actually $47,000 and change. And above that, you pay a 15% bracket to about 518,000 plus. And then over that, you're at the full 20% bracket that kicks in at 609,350 for individuals. Over 518,901, it's 15%. And then it's 20% at the next tier over that. So the idea of harvesting losses is a good one. The capital gains rates for long-term gains are fairly low. Short-term gains are ordinary. Not much you can do about that unless you can match them with losses that will offset them. So what's often called tax loss harvesting is an important sport at this time of the year. You've got losses in stocks. Even if you want to keep those stocks, you may consider selling the stock, taking the losses. You have to avoid the wash day rule, so you can't do it within a very short period of time. But you could rebuy those stocks again in 2024 and yet pick up the loss, pick up your position, increase your tax basis. That's often a prudent move, and your investment advisor can advise you to do that. So the basic blocking and tackling is kind of the order of the day. We don't see major changes in the laws coming between now and the election. So in a steady course, you're typically deferring income and accelerating deductions of all kinds. And the same thing is true with your charitable contributions, your medical expenses, your interest, your mortgage, the things that you can pay. You may want to pay them, make sure they're paid this year so you can get the deductions sooner rather than later. And that makes a big deal. That can have a significant impact on your taxes. Other than that, there are a lot of tax-favored investments that you may wish to consider. You have all kinds of real estate that has accelerated depreciation, so you can get some sheltered cash flow out of those deals. There are specific oil and gas deals with some unique benefits. There are agribusiness transactions that have some rather unique tax laws, including the only net operating loss carryback still allowable in the law. So you may want to look at some of those tax-favored investments that tend to be oil and gas, real estate, natural gas, environmental things in general. Those tend to be the cherries in the tax code, and they not only can generate a good yield, but have a positive impact on your income tax situation as well. And then avoiding the tax altogether, well, that's what muni bonds, are all about, and similar investments that just don't pay tax at all, and some don't even pay state tax if you have a bond that's issued in that particular state. So all of the typical traditional strategies are perfectly appropriate, and that's what people are going to be doing. There aren't a lot of tax panaceas out there that work or are worth the risk at this point. So stick with the blocking and tackling. Almost go through it in a checklist kind of manner to see if any of the things available work for you, and try to take advantage of those that actually make sense.
What an amazing inventory you just gave of all of the great blocking and tackling tax strategies. But there's something that I'm kind of afraid of, Tom. It's called the Supreme Court. They're starting to get their fingers into tax law? Help me understand this and stop me from losing my mind and getting terrified.
Yeah, they have traditionally stayed out of most issues other than pretty critical or important issues. And I have not been a fan since I went to law school of the idea that they can change a tax provision and apply it retroactively. So I think the Constitution does prohibit retroactive tax changes. The Supreme Court doesn't see it that way. So, for example, when you buy your home and you buy a home for 30 years, it's your final home, you're going to live there 30, 40 years till you die. You buy it with a set of facts, like, for example, the mortgage is 100% deductible and your real estate taxes are 100% deductible. And all of a sudden, you're in the house for 20 years. Now the law changes. The government says, oh, not just for new homes, but for everybody's home. We're going to change the rules after the fact. So all those things that you relied on and did the analysis that you could afford this home based on this interest deduction, based on the size of the mortgage, and the fact you could deduct your real estate tax, now you get no deduction for the real estate tax ever, even though that's the deal you had when you bought it. And we're only going to let you deduct $750,000 of your mortgage, not the $1 million that you took out. That kind of stuff chills business, chills investment, is not good for the economy, and it ought to be absolutely prohibited. But they have chosen not to do that. They can put a new provision in and apply it retroactively, and they've sort of sort of made a fine line definition that they can't put in a new tax, but they can change an existing tax or the rate. And that's a lot of intellectual dishonesty in my book. I'm not buying that. The fact that they took away the real estate deductions for existing homeowners, it's one thing to put that in place for everyone that buys a home from that point forward. It's quite something different to penalize all the people that did the analyses and were relying on that. Now they can't deduct it. So not a fan of that at all. And the most recent decision is very interesting. A couple of taxpayers sued the government over roughly $15,000. And that was the tax they had to pay on foreign income. And here's why this case is so important. It's been all over the papers in the last 30 days. The gist of it is that in the TCJA, passed in 2017, there was a provision that taxed foreign income, whether you got it or not, right? And how that's defined has now been determined by the Supreme Court as when the assets held in the foreign company have appreciated, you get taxed on them whether they've been sold or not. So let's say you got a piece of land, it went up to 150 and now gets condemned and it's worth 120. You're going to pay tax on that $300,000 appreciation, and when it goes down, nothing happens. You get no deduction. You just get less proceeds. So in effect, the definition of income was at stake, and the government has said that this definition is okay, which I don't think it is, to treat income as appreciation in property when there was no income. And this also has impact because one of the Biden provisions that I mentioned earlier was that to impose a capital gains tax and the Obamacare tax in your estates on appreciated assets that you don't sell, which means there's no liquidity, there's no money to pay the tax. So arguably under the Supreme Court decision, that tax is legitimate. So this family had this foreign investment. It went up. They got no money. They couldn't get any money. They had no right to any money. They don't control the investment. They got taxed $15,000 because it's a foreign investment, which seems to treat it differently than U.S. investments. There may be an issue there of equal protection, other issues as well. But the long and short of it, I think this is a bad decision. I don't think the government should be able to tax appreciation until you realize it. So think about appreciating real estate. You get taxed on the appreciation every year, whether you sell the property or not. Kind of crazy, right? So I'm not a fan of this decision. It's been criticized, not as big an uproar as I would have hoped for. So we'll see how it ultimately plays out. But that's my concern. So retroactive taxation shouldn't be allowed in general. And then the definition of income should not include appreciation when you don't really get any income. Appreciation is not income in my book. So that's the concern.
So we're going to go back to the first thing you said about all of the trillions of dollars in debt and where's that going to get paid? My real question is there enough money in the projected tax revenue of the United States over the next, I don't know how long, to ever pay this stuff off? Or are we just kidding ourselves?
Well, ultimately, we're such a strong economy, we could probably come back from almost everything. However, given the growing trends of entitlement and I don't really want to work and, give me benefits and 30-hour week sounds good to me. We're not going in the right direction. And that makes that repayment even less probable. And of course, the politicians will kick the can down the road as far as they possibly can. I mean, look at Illinois. We're now the highest some data says we're the highest overall taxing state. We're certainly in the top 2 or 3. California and New York are in the same boat. We've lost the most people of any state, and we're the most bankrupt by far. So how can you be one of the very highest overall taxing states and be the most bankrupt? Well, that inverse correlation shouldn't exist, yet it does. So my fear is that the federal government goes the same way. The writing on the wall here is that the top 10% has paid increasing tax on average almost every year since, not almost, every year since World War II on average. And that's going to continue to escalate to where we have it now. 60% of the population paid nothing in 2022. That's egregious. That's not tenable. It's a problem. So the writing is on the wall. If you're a business owner, top 10%, top 1%, be prepared. Every tax of every kind is likely to be tightened. The rates are going to go up, and you're going to pay more than your fair share until somebody wakes up. And they may never wake up, and people just start to leave, which they've already done. We had a tremendous exodus under the Obama administration, and people have fled the high tax states in droves in favor of the lower tax states that have revenue surpluses. Yeah, well, welcome to Florida. I might.
Thank you. You read the article about
clients. Yeah, 50 plus clients moved to Naples, and one of the biggest taxpayers in Illinois is right there in Miami on Brickell Avenue, now paying taxes to Florida, or not paying taxes to Florida instead of paying taxes to Illinois. So it isn't helping these high tax, fairly bankrupt states that tend to be in the same boat. They tend to be anti-business, corrupt, high tax, and Illinois is the epitome of that. So welcome to my world.
Well, I want to thank you as always. I want to give you a little sugar. Tell me about the Blackhawks. How are they going to do?
Well, they're not playing as well together as I think they can, though I've seen them beat some much stronger teams and seen some real excitement out of some of the younger players. And those younger players' names are showing up on jerseys already. So people are pretty optimistic for the future. I think we'll just be okay this year, but we're building. And I think the young talent has some real hope. So games are a ton of fun. I'm certainly enjoying it and expect to continue to do so. But I think it's next year or the year after where they really could do something. So we'll see how this plays out.
Well, can't wait to see you in the Stanley Cup playoffs and have really good things to talk about.
As they say, your words in God's ears.
Well, it'll happen. It'll happen. Tom, I want to thank you. I'm going to ask you to stick with us for just a minute as we go into the green room. I want to thank you, as always, for being a friend of the show and bringing such great advice. I want to wish you and yours a happy and healthy holiday season.
And to you, it's always a pleasure to join you. Thanks again for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. As everybody knows, we drop a new podcast Wednesdays at noon. We're going to have all kinds of great stuff coming up in the new year. Episode 750 is coming. It'll be a really special show. I want to thank Tom for being here and joining us today. I want to thank you for being here today and joining us, our sponsors, the University of Florida Center for Real Estate Studies, the Bergstrom Center. I also want to Kelly's from Chicago. And I want to thank our sponsors, as always, Warren Henry, always the best price, always the best service, always Warren Henry. Make sure to check them out and become a member of the Warren Henry family. This is Jim Freed for Freed on Business. Remember, the person who wants to do something finds a way. The other finds the excuse. Now go out there and make it happen. God bless you. God bless America, and happy holidays to everybody.